and welcome to another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that will not be debating which is worse, brother's wife or wife's sister. We've got too much to do. All right, we got too much to do. It's our AL East division preview episode. Welcome to our MLB show for this week, by the way. I'm Dallas, that's Drew. Matt will join us in just any time now. He'll be here. But like I said, we are previewing the AL East on today's show. It is number 2 of our division previews. Make sure you check out our episode from last week about the NL East, where we started with our division previews. We are in the run-up to spring training. We are in the run-up to the baseball season beginning. And we are, as we did last season, previewing every division in depth, breaking it down. And today, we will cover the AL East. Before that, we're going to talk about a couple quick things, though, some things that did happen in the world of baseball over the course of the last week since we recorded that we think are interesting. So where we want to start is, well, let's do this. Give Matt a little time to join us here and start with, in the last week or so, the Emmanuel Clase saga has deepened a little bit. So if you are unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, one of the best relief pitchers in baseball, Emmanuel Clase, over the course of late last season and into the offseason, got embroiled in a scandal revolving around him purposefully throwing bad pitches in order to benefit sports gamblers, right? So that's what was going down. It's, I believe, maybe still all alleged at this point. I don't think there's been any sort of like trial or anything, but the video's there, the proof is there. He was doing something weird because just the way it looks. And so we've been kind of following this. The baseball world has had their eyes open, their ears open for some updates. And we got one in the last week as people have been pouring through more video and as more information has come out, more people are giving their testimonies, things like that. It has been alleged that Clase rigged a pitch in a playoff game. Okay, so this is not only regular season, middle of August, or middle of July kind of stuff where you can maybe see where his mind was, even though that is a wrong mindset altogether. This is playoffs. This is the postseason, and he is purposefully throwing bad pitches in postseason games. And so this is huge, huge scandal, and it has been, but now is even huger. So let's just talk about this for a second. We haven't really talked about it on the show too much because there hasn't been much to talk about. But what are your thoughts about this? I mean, this is crazy. Like I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful that this guy, clearly, one of the most talented pitchers around right now, decided to risk throwing his career away. It seems like it will indeed end his playing career. For like what I've seen, the figures I've seen, it's like not that much money. Like it's less money than you would make just by being a good closer. So I don't really understand the logic behind this at all. Yeah, they're alleging he threw it was in the playoff game in 2024 against the Tigers, which I'm trying to remember that. Yeah, they ended up winning that series, and that was a 7-0 game when he came into pitch. So, like, if you want to look at it that way, did he really cost the team a game? Blah blah blah. But it is just absolutely a disgrace to the sport. The same way that when the Astros trash can sign stealing scandal broke, it just puts everything they did for the last however many years under this blanket of suspicion, like what's real and what's not. We've only have like certain appearances or pitches or whatever from Clase that are being thrown into this case right now, but you think about every game he ever entered, Granted, he also was one of the best relievers in baseball at this time. Was it just like, I don't know. It's very confusing to me. I'm interested to see how it all plays out. It seems like for months now we've known he's not going to play Major League Baseball ever again. It's just that big of a scandal. And yeah, I don't think anything's like officially proven yet, but um, enough for him to not be playing all these months. So I don't see that going away.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, for me, it's just I kind of think about it now, like, and I kind of want to know, like, what do you think? Where does it stack up in terms of competitive offenses in the sports history, right? We have some pretty major things that have happened, right? You mentioned one, however you feel about it, the steroid era could be considered something like this, some sort of a competitive offense. Um, I mean, all the way back to the Black Sox, scandal back
Mm.
in the way back in the day. So where does this kind of rank for you? It's one guy, but I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, well, there's also, I think there's like one other pitcher involved, Ortiz or something like that. I can't remember.
Mm,
Luis Ortiz maybe,
yeah.
but but still, this to me, I we'll see how it all plays out. But now that we're getting playoff games involved, um, I don't know, like I would put it up there with the Black Sox scandal as like the worst of all time, just because a pitcher purposefully doing bad is not the same as a hitter trying to get a competitive advantage. Like
Hmm.
what the Astros did absolutely was wrong, but they, at the end of the day, still had to hit the ball and still had to do the things you need to do to win baseball games. And like the steroid era, I don't think it was, smart or right to take steroids, but at the end of the day, you still had to go into a baseball game and perform. This is, taking that element out of it altogether, which is what the Black Sox scandal was. I don't think anything will ever touch that, where, a whole team rigs a World Series. But yeah, I mean, this is as bad as anything we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, well, we will continue to keep an eye on it as it develops more. I think that it'll be something very interesting to see how much more comes out, what the fallout is, things like that once everything, this dust settles and stuff. But speaking of settling, we talked about a guy last week, right, in our preview of the NL East. We talked about the Phillies. We talked about Nick Castellanos. Well, he's settling into a new home already, and that new home is the San Diego Padres. And so I started with him because we talked about him last week, and we had a whole segment where we kind of talked about he's over, and we don't think that he might be worth it or whatever. And then he signed with the Padres shortly a few days after that. So, but this was part of a flurry of moves that were made by the Padres over the weekend, including the extension of their general manager. And so, not including that one, we already knew what AJ Preller brings to the table. But this flurry of moves that they made, kind of what's going on? What are the Padres up to with all those moves they made over the weekend?
Yeah, well, the big story of the Padres for the last couple of years basically has been their ownership situation. Ever since Peter Seidler died, his family is taking control. There's been disagreements between his widow and his siblings or something like that. And now the Padres are going up for sale, I believe, or they're exploring a sale or something like that. Um, so that has been a cloud over the Padres because for the last few years leading up to Peter Seidler's death, they were acting like a big market team more than they maybe ever have. They were signing big money contracts to free agents. They were extending guys. Um, they were doing everything they could, making crazy big trades, like the biggest trades in baseball at the time. And it hasn't resulted in a World Series win yet, but like it's I'm not going to take anything away from them because it's good to see a team trying. But they clearly haven't been able to operate the same way financially the last couple of years. So this free agency so far has been pretty underwhelming for a team that 2 years ago took the Dodgers to the brink and, last year flamed out in the wild card round, but like, made the playoffs and everything. They are going around taking low risk, high reward deals with all these guys. So Nick Castellanos is one. The Phillies have to pay his contract, so the Padres only owe him the league minimum. So that's nothing. If he sucks in a month, you just cut him, whatever. Someone else might take a flyer. Um, but we've seen Nick Castellanos be one of the better hitters in baseball. So, if they do hit on that, I imagine I don't have like the highest hopes, but maybe you can find some lightning in a bottle. And then they did a ton of that stuff on the pitching side as well. So they signed Walker Buehler that's the most recent one, I believe, to a minor league deal. They signed Griffin Canning. They signed Herman Marquez. Earlier in the offseason, they signed Tristan McKenzie. Um, this, we've seen all those guys at various points be really good major league pitchers. So if any one of them hits, or multiple of them, then the Padres have an honest to God rotation. It's taken some hits lately. Dylan Cease is gone. Yu Darvish is hurt and perhaps going to retire. So they could use some fresh arms, and if any of these guys hit, um, there's quality major league innings there. I'm sure there is. My highest hopes would be for Herman Marquez, probably coming away from the Rockies seems like a move that would be nice for a pitcher, especially going to a team like the Padres. But really, any one of them, like I wouldn't be totally shocked to see be a major contributor for the Padres this year.
Yeah, Herman Marquez, welcome to the land of run support, friend. Like, yeah, finally, after all this time, it's like one of those things where it's like he is gonna. I think he'll do. He has potential to do solid stuff for the Padres this year because of just how you know good he has shown that he can be, and in that ballpark that he was playing in. That's a whole different thing. To be good there is different than being good
Hmm.
anywhere else as a pitcher. But yeah, so well, I mean, we'll see how those moves shake out for the Padres, and we'll talk about the Padres plenty over the course of the season. So these guys' names will come up again, I'm sure. But for now, let's turn our attention to our division preview for this week. So, like I mentioned at the top of the show, it will be the AL East. So we're going to start, as we always do, with where we've been. So 2025 standings for the AL East. From top to bottom, here we go. The Toronto Blue Jays finished in first place. They are 94 and 68, and they lost the World Series to the Dodgers. That is how their season ended. The New York Yankees finished in second place with an identical record, 94 and 68. They lost the division series to the Blue Jays. And the Boston Red Sox finished third, 89 wins, 73 losses. They also made the postseason and lost the wild card to the Yankees. Just a division that kept beating up on each other all throughout the postseason. It was very entertaining to watch as someone who is not, have to have a rooting interest there. Um, then in the teams that did not make the playoffs in this division, fourth place was the Tampa Bay Rays, 77 wins, 85 losses. And then the Baltimore Orioles finished last, shocking everyone. 75 wins, 87 losses. So even the last place team in this division wasn't all too bad record wise. It's not the worst thing that could happen, but um, you know, that is how this division shook out last year. So three playoff teams here. Potential for that to happen once again. We'll talk about that a little more as we go along the show. But so that's where we've been. That's how we finished 2025 for these teams. So let's talk about where we're going, and we do this in finishing order. So off-season recaps coming up, and the preview of the 2026 team for these guys. So Toronto Blue Jays. Let's start there with the team that finished first. So the Blue Jays, like I said, they finished as the AL East champion in 2025 and rode that wave all the way to the World Series after triumphing in one of the most entertaining league championship series in recent memory against the Mariners. They took the almighty Dodgers to the brink in Game 7 of the World Series, defying everyone's expectations, but ultimately they finished as the runner-up. So, the Blue Jays did not rest on their laurels for 1 second. Their offseason has been one of the busiest in all of baseball as they chase a repeat as AL champions. So, let's talk about the moves they made and give us our offseason recap from a perspective of who they added, who they retained, and then maybe who left as well.
Yep. So the Blue Jays, their biggest move of the offseason was their first, well, maybe not their exact first move, but one of their first moves. And that was to sign Dylan Cease to a big contract, free agent starting pitcher. He'll slot in nicely there. They also signed starting pitcher Cody Ponce from, he was pitching in Korea for the last couple of years. I believe he was the Korean League MVP last year. They signed Tyler Rogers, one of the most effective relief pitchers in recent years, despite his wacky delivery. One of the mystery bag Japanese players that, maybe not as highly touted as the guys who came over in recent years, but certainly could be a good bat in their lineup, Kazuma Okamoto. And they were able to keep Shane Bieber around for another year, although he is having some injury stuff, so we'll see about that.
Yep.
Notable departures. The biggest one is Bo Bichette. He came up with Vlad same year, and they weren't able to keep him around. He is a New York Met now. They also lost starting pitcher Chris Bassett. Max Scherzer, most likely, he's still unsigned. Sir Anthony Dominguez, and a couple utility guys in IKF, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and Ty France.
All right. Well, there we go. That's who's new here, who's still here, and who is not here anymore. And man, that was good. We should do it like that. I just kind of rattled that off. That was good. I like it. Okay. Well, maybe we'll call it that from now on. Okay. So let's talk about some of these moves and what the impact might be. Okay. So I think with a team that makes this many moves, where I want to start is, you know, who did they add that you think is going to make the most difference between the team that we saw struggle to close games in the World Series and this team now?
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, there's always areas to improve on. The Blue Jays came as close as you can to winning a World Series without winning a World Series. They were so close, like a couple times. So credit to them. I think the biggest move here is Dylan Cease. They got through the season and through the playoffs on a little bit of a patchwork rotation. Not to take away from guys. I mean, Kevin Gossman is a dog. They got a huge like rookie first month and then playoff run for Trey Savage. So that's awesome for them. But they really could have used another dog out there, really, and that's what Dylan Cease is. I know his numbers have been kind of up and down in terms of like the final results of the season, but the underlying stuff has never faded, and he got this contract for what they expect him to be, not for what he was. So I do think he'll be really good. I think he'll kind of take over as the ace. Kevin Gossman, I believe this is his last year under contract from them. So I really do like that move. Offensively, I don't know. Like Okamoto is interesting, but like we just, we don't know for sure. But they lost Bo Bichette, so like they lost one of their best bats, and as exciting as an offseason as this was for the Blue Jays, it felt like they left stuff on the table. And that's kind of actually going to be a theme, I think, throughout this division is like a busy offseason. Does that make it a good offseason? It seemed like the Blue Jays were primed to get one of these bats, whether it was Bichette coming back or Kyle Tucker. It seemed like he was a realistic spot for them as Matt joins us.
Oh yeah.
Alex Alex Bregman was floated there. And in the end, all those bats sign elsewhere, and they get Okamoto, and their big fish is Dylan Cease. And there's nothing wrong with getting Dylan Cease and improving the pitching staff. I just don't know if this team is actually that much improved despite all the moves they made. And their playoff run was fueled on some magical Octobers for some guys like Barger, Ernie Clement, Nathan Lucas. Like these guys were solid role players for them who just like took off in the playoffs. And I don't know if you can count on that for a 162 game season, you know? So I do have some concerns about the lineup. Um, that being said, they took the Dodgers to the absolute brink in the World Series and they upgraded the pitching staff. So, like, you know, I still think this is a very good team.
Yeah, to go from the place they were at, right, where it was like you have the Dodgers on the ropes. Bo Bichette is like what? How many outs away from just immortality, like Blue Jays immortality,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Two outs
and
away, I
then
believe. Yeah.
yeah, 2 outs to have it go from there, that moment, and swing all the way around now to Bo Bichette's not here anymore. They missed out on Kyle Tucker, like after what appears to be training their eyes on him and looking completely away from Bo Bichette to go try to get Kyle Tucker, and then missing out on him only for him to sign with the Dodgers, right?
Right.
Like, what a like that. Those last 2 outs is just like I want to just go back there and live there. Like I don't want to live now where I live where what
Yeah.
happened after that happened,
I think from October through like maybe like the second week of December, the Blue Jays were the hottest team, like, you know, through what they did on the field and then what they started to
Mhm.
do this offseason. And then since then, it's just honestly been underwhelming. Like, you know, that you
Yeah.
kind of thought they were poised for more.
I'd have a question to ask you, Drew, about this because I've been thinking about the Blue Jays since Dallas told us this was our division we're doing. Um, why don't people sign there? Like, just real question, because last offseason we talked about this, and I was like, well, maybe it's because it just seems like they've got this like losing culture, and they're never able to put out this competitive team, and yada yada yada. Well, they shut me up this year, right? Like they clearly put out a competitive team, and like you said, took the Dodgers to the brink, Game 7, all that, 2 outs away, and yet it still feels like they tried to throw money at like a ton of the top guys in free agency and just didn't land really any of them. Like I'm curious what you guys both would think, but Drew specifically, I mean, you're in this division. Like, what is it about the Blue Jays that can't land free agents? I don't know that I understand it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's various factors, and I'm sure it varies from free agent to free agent. Um, I do think there's probably a decent like from what I know about growing up playing baseball in the United States and from what I've seen from what I've heard about like behind the scenes stuff, like these are like any of the US guys are like down home American boys, you know? And I think there could be an element of I don't really want to live in Canada. It's
Mm.
an unfamiliar place and you know, like I don't know. I think that could be a factor that isn't thought of that often, but like it's kind of taken for granted. Like that is another country. Like
Yeah,
there's different stuff going on there. Um, I do also like I wonder like what was the Kyle Tucker offer? What like, you know, it was like maybe a more long-term thing, but the Dodgers blew it out of the water. Like I don't know, like I didn't really hear much about them with Bo Bichette, despite the fact that at the beginning of the offseason we all kind of penciled him into coming back. So I don't really know the extent of their pursuits this offseason. Um, and I do think you were right in the past, like when they couldn't land these top guys, there was an element of, yeah, but you're the Blue Jays. Like you know, what have you done to make me think this is a competitive team? That has obviously shifted. Um, so then it just comes down to what are they offering and what are the other teams offering, and you know, a guy like Dylan Cease, they jumped the market on him. I don't know how the bidding got and like what other teams got involved, but like they got that one done quick. It kind of made us believe they could do more. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that probably only the players can answer.
Yeah, it's interesting because like even Dylan Cease, as great as he is and can be, like he still is coming off of a bad year for his standards, and it's one of those like things where it's like it seems like they're able to get a lot of not like reclamation projects, but like they get guys who necessarily aren't necessarily at their peaks, hoping they can get their peaks. But then the actual like top free agents, I just feel like this dates back to even like Shohei. I mean, dude, they threw the bag at Shohei, and that was like public knowledge how much they threw at him. And
Mhm.
it just seems like there's all these top guys that don't sign there. So I feel like it's very interesting. And I didn't really think about the like, Canada America thing, which I suppose could influence some guys' decisions. But at the same time, it's like, I just looked it up because I was curious. There's plenty of guys there who their permanent residences are US. They
Mhm.
just work in Canada.
Right. Yeah,
So
I mean,
it's interesting.
yeah, I'm not sure, and I do wonder like if the Dodgers just like didn't exist, how many people would sign with the Blue Jays? Like, is it just that the Dodgers come in and have as good of an offer, if not better, and plus they're the Dodgers, so people want to sign there? I don't know, but it does seem like that was the trend for a while was Blue Jays involved, but guys going elsewhere.
Did you guys see the Walker Bueller quote from his intro press conference
About
about the Dodgers? Him throwing shade at the Dodgers.
about them spending money or something.
He pretty much just like because obviously the Padres just signed him, and he was like, "It's just nice to play for a team that actually wants to play hard to win, not just buy every player available." It's like, hell yeah, dude. Let's get nasty with it.
All right.
That seems pretty wink
Um,
wink.
yeah, it's very subtle. Very subtle. So good for him for keeping it on the DL a little bit. But yeah, that's good. Good quotes. Rivals come to play. So let's do it. Okay, so the Blue Jays. Let's wrap it up here and move on to our next team. But like we talked about, this offseason for the Blue Jays was as much about who they got as who they didn't.
Hmm.
Right? And so it may leave some of their fans wondering how much better they actually got. The back end of the lineup was something to point a finger at when it comes to the World Series loss. And it could be argued that the lineup as a whole got a little worse this offseason with who they lost and who they didn't get to replace them. So improved infield defense and pitching depth, though, are luxuries in this sport, and the Blue Jays can say they now have them. And so time will tell if it can be enough to propel this team to another division title, another AL pennant, perhaps get them over the hump to win the championship. But now we're going to talk about a team who last year, when we were talking about this division, we said a lot of the same things we just said about the Blue Jays about them, right? Because they were in a very similar place. Second place in the AL East this year was the New York Yankees. So let's talk about their offseason and where they're going this year. So, you know, having just lost to the World Series, to the Dodgers in the World Series at the beginning of, at the end of last season, 2 seasons ago, um, before the regular season last year, we were kind of saying a lot of the similar things that we just said about the Blue Jays about the Yankees and how they were going to fill the gaps that led to that loss. And you know, let's identify the weaknesses and see what they can do. Um, some of those additions that they did make proved mostly worth it. The Yankees spent the regular season as one of the most consistent teams in the AL, and come playoff time, their path to the World Series went through their division rivals. They defeated the Red Sox in the wild card series, and then they lost to the Blue Jays in the divisional series. So they finished short of that World Series title yet again. The Yankees do. So if last offseason's moves couldn't do it, what can? So let's talk about their offseason recap here, and let's go through what did I say? Who's new here? Who's still here? And who's not here? Right.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how we'll frame it. And Drew gave off the Blue Jays one. So Matt, why don't you give us the Yankees versions of this?
Yeah, so I mean, like you're kind of saying, it's the Yankees. a lot of the same faces are returning, right? A lot of their big moves, and it really kind of capped off with Trent Grisham actually taking his quality offer. I feel like, I saw a lot of people on social media for the Yankees talking like feels like that wasn't part of their plan. They didn't think that he would actually take it, and he did. So it kind of changed some of their spending plans. But they get to keep Cody Bellinger. They re-signed him. Obviously, Trent Grisham. They traded for a couple guys. Ryan Weathers, for example, the pitcher from Miami, originally Padres. Uh, they got to keep Ahmad Rosario. They end up re-signing Paul Goldschmidt. They sign Paul Blackburn, Ryan Yarborough. So it's a ton of guys that were on this team last year who are either acquired or signed, whatever. But they re-signed them. And then as far as guys leaving, I mean, just some bullpen, honestly. Devin Williams, obviously a big name, but really underperformed as a Yankee. And then Luke Weaver left as well. And then Austin Slater, who's kind of just like, sure, they lose him. So be it.
All right, so there we go. So, let's start here with our discussion of some of these moves and the impact of them. What is the value of this Yankees team just kind of running it back? What's the mindset there?
I mean, I'm, a Yankee hater, of course, as a Red Sox fan. So it is funny to me that they're running it back with a team that really didn't come all that close to beating the Blue Jays in that division series. Um, the only new name, as Matt ran through it, is Ryan Weathers. Basically, the only new name of note is Ryan Weathers, and he's really more of a depth starter. I think like maybe they think they can tap into something there, but I don't think you expect him to be like an ace or anything. Um, and losing Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, despite the underperformance at various points, like those were names that that like if Devin Williams was back on the Yankees, I wouldn't expect him to be that bad again. I
Hmm.
understand why they would want to move on, but I wouldn't expect him to be that bad again. That being said, like for all my Yankee hate, like this team did tie the Blue Jays in the regular season. They had the same record. If they were able to host a divisional series and have their starters rested, yeah, I could see where maybe they would think they could fare better. I would have, similar to what I said with the Blue Jays, I would have kind of expected more from the Yankees. It seems like they could have set their sights a little higher, but at the same time, it wasn't the perfect free agency class for what they needed. They did need to keep Cody Bellinger. They were able to do that. Their upgrade positions, it would have been more like, yeah, like third base. Like I guess you throw Bregman in there, but like I didn't ever really see that happening. Um, Shortstop, but it's like, are they really going to give up on Volpe? And again, who's the big free agent shortstop? Like Ha-Seong Kim, like he's good, but you know, I don't think that would have been like the big splash that they needed there. And so I don't mind kind of them running it back, especially knowing that Garrett Cole should be back at some point this season. Um, Carlos Rodon will be back. Like they've got some pitching, some starting pitching in particular. They made a lot of moves at the deadline last year that I think they kind of take into account when they're, considering what the team looks like. It's not fully running it back in their mind because like that's not the team that they started with last year.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. Like I hate the Yankees, of course. I don't expect them to be like a big scary team. Um, but at the same time, I fully expect them to be solid and like be competing for first place in this division.
Yeah, and I think what you said right there at the end too is such a big thing. Like even at his age, like getting Garrett Cole back, he did. I don't think that he started a game last year, or I thought it was before the
No.
season. Yeah, so it's like you go an entire season without your ace, and it's like, okay, that's maybe the biggest addition a team can make is bringing in an ace pitcher, right? Like he is their second best player, I think would be pretty easy to say, just like
Mhm.
holistically on the team. So getting him back is such a huge like boost to the team that even with kind of the like meh off season, that alone should provide them multiple wins. Like, you know what I mean? Like already substantially that does help the team. So,
Yeah, totally. I think it's one of those things where that's kind of what I thought as well, like might have been the mindset, right? Is like we've got a couple guys who weren't really regular season contributors last year on the pitching side. Garrett Cole was one, and then
mhm,
Cam Schlittler was the other one, right? Who contributed a lot in his couple postseason appearances, who didn't contribute in the regular season last year. So the mindset for me, that was kind of where I kind of went with it was, okay, so those two guys are additions of their own, in
mhm,
a way, right? If you want to think about it like that. And so, we add a couple of players who we think are going to be pretty decent to last year's team. And then the other side of it for me was like Drew was kind of talking about was that, some teams, the mindset is that kind of the off season starts at the trade deadline, right? So it's like we go back to that point to count the moves that we made, right? And so some teams do see it that way, and so um, I think the Yankees kind of opted to see it that way this time around. But any way you slice it, running it back was the mood this year in the Bronx, right? 2025 Yankees were a good team, so in a way, it makes sense to retain as many free agents as you can. Um, Maybe Yankees fans would have preferred more splashy moves, but uh, they might be accustomed to that. But if so, they would do well to remember that Garrett Cole and Cam Schlittler are additions in their own way,
mhm.
and the impact that they could bring to last year's Yankee squad could be massive when it comes down to the Yankees' chances to chase down Toronto in the division. I mean, this was a Yankees team that finished with the exact same record. So now you've got the Blue Jays, who we just talked about, who maybe didn't necessarily get as much better as we thought they would, and then a Yankees team that stayed with the kind of personnel they had, and then get a couple players back. That could be that 1 or 2 game difference, in a division that plays itself this close again this time. If that's the case, they can make the difference. So, and certainly in the postseason, having the guys that they're going to have, hopefully for that stretch, makes a difference too. So, um, all right, so next team up is the third place finisher from last year. You know them from Drew's hat. It's the Boston Red Sox, right? So one of the biggest stories of the 2025 regular season was the return of the Boston Red Sox to AL contention, right? It was fueled by a farm system that was full to the brim with major league ready talent across the diamond and a dominant season from their newly acquired ace, Garrett Crochet.
Mhm.
So even after trading away yet another franchise icon in Rafael Devers, the Red Sox made the two-team AL East race a three-team barn burner down the stretch, right? So this season did end with an unceremonious exit in the wild card round, surrounded by what ifs. Roman Anthony did not play in that series. Other what ifs did arise for that team. Um, the Red Sox fan base, they kind of went into the season, this offseason, expecting some fireworks because that's what Red Sox fans are kind of used to, is when they get to this spot, they make the moves that keep them in this spot as long as they can handle it, right? So let's talk about their offseason. And Drew, carry us through what the Red Sox did this offseason.
Yeah, I mean they had a an AJ Preller-esque offseason in terms of a lot of trades. They did make one big free agency splash that was to sign Ranger Suarez to a 5-year contract.
Mhm.
He'll slot in right behind Crochet as the number 2 in that rotation. They also traded for their expected number 3 starting pitcher, Sonny Gray from the Cardinals, first baseman Wilson Contreras from the Cardinals as well, Caleb Durbin, second or third base, we'll see, from the Brewers, Johan Oviedo, a back end starter from the Pirates, um, a couple other Brewers in that Caleb Durbin trade that could contribute, and then we also signed Isaiah Kiner-Falefa for some reason. But the big departure, the big story was Alex Bregman is not returning. He is a Cub now. But a few other guys not returning as well. Lucas Giolito is still out there for someone to sign, but most definitely won't be here. Steven Matz, who we got at the deadline last year. Rob Refsnyder, who is a great platoon guy, clubhouse guy. He'll be great with the Mariners. Dustin May, another disappointing deadline guy, and then Liam Hendricks, who really hardly pitched for the Red Sox. Yeah, that's the in and out and stayed.
Okay. So let's start with the big one, right? So Alex Bregman going into this offseason, it was time for him to, opt out of that deal and uh, test free agency again. So it was kind of, I think I assumed that he would, the Red Sox would be the front runner to have him back, but then it started taking a while, and then it started taking even longer, and so it's like, wait a minute, what is going on here? So um, take me through the sort of Red Sox fan perspective on what happened with Alex Bregman and where did it all fall apart.
Yeah, this one seems fairly straightforward. It seems like the Red Sox front office just misread the situation and paid the price for it. He he got a good contract from the Cubs. Seems like the Red Sox maybe didn't believe that he had that offer in his pocket. Um, and also there was reports that they wouldn't give him a no trade clause, and that was very important to him. So just a couple areas where the Red Sox wouldn't budge, and maybe it was hubris. Maybe deep down the front office didn't really want to keep a guy around who was 32 and blah blah blah. Whatever it was, seemed like a miscalculation, and he is no longer here. And you know what? That was the immediate pivot to Ranger Suarez after that. It didn't seem like we were going to be targeting pitching to that degree. But as soon as Bregman signed elsewhere, we jump on Ranger Suarez. So, credit to them for pivoting. I know that the biggest story here is losing Bregman, and I know that that also gets tied into the fact that we traded Rafael Devers last year. And I don't need to rehash that. It's obviously a bad look, but I don't want to do a disservice to the guys who are still on the team. And I don't know that this is for sure a worse team than last year. It's going to be a different type of team. Um, but the only major bat that we're losing is Bregman, and we brought in a bat that is fairly comparable for the next couple years, and that's Wilson Contreras. So, um, different position, maybe a different type of hitter, but if you look at their overall production, it's been, very similar. So, I don't even think the lineup is significantly worse than last year. I mean, losing Devers is a different thing altogether, but I'm talking about from the end of last year. Like you mentioned, Roman Anthony missed the last month of the season and the playoffs. So and the pitching is obviously upgraded, and I'll go into that in a minute. But I do think that as annoying of an offseason as this was, and as we kind of saw the roadmap and it seemed like they did not follow the roadmap for a successful Red Sox offseason. I'm still looking at the team today and I'm like, there's there's a pretty decent baseball team here.
Yeah, right on. I mean, totally, right? Like you can totally see that. Like you see where the original vision or maybe lack of this being the original vision fell apart, but you can kind of see through that and past that into the one that actually materialized, right? Which is this one. And you can see where they made their pivots, they made their adjustments when the things that they maybe wanted to go for didn't work out. I found out about this late, but so we never talked about it on the show, but we definitely would have if I had known about it when it was happening. But some rumors came out about them trying to see what the Angels would want for Zach Neto. Like that's interesting. Like that if think them having that kind of thing on their mind is interesting to me. And so there was a layout here of okay, if this doesn't happen for us, if we can't get him back on our terms, Alex Bregman can't get him back on our terms, we have this other idea. And it seemed like they were able to execute on that other idea that they might have had. So let's talk about a little bit about the pitching, right? Because Ranger Suarez is a guy who
Mhm.
has major playoff innings. He has major like experience in big moments, the things that the Red Sox are hopefully going to need, that someone to bring to their team. And so beyond him, though, talk about the starting lineup as a whole, or the starting this rotation as a whole, and what you see for it in the coming season.
I mean, I think it's going to be the strength of the team. If the Red Sox are going to be successful this year, it's going to be on the back of the starting rotation. Um, because I mean, like they're projected, I believe, by Fangraphs to have the most WAR from their starting rotation. I don't know if that's necessarily the best stat to gauge how good a pitching staff is, but it's not nothing. Um, and I mean, Garrett Crochet at the top is one of the, in my opinion, three best pitchers. There's like the clear one and two in whatever order you want to pick them. And I think based on last year and the like kind of half season he had before that, I would put Crochet at number three. There's an argument to be had at the very least. And then Ranger Suarez is kind of the perfect complement to him because he's a totally different type of pitcher. But he's also, been very effective. But like Crochet just throws gas and he throws, nasty breaking stuff. And Suarez is, he's more finesse and he's a ground ball guy and, relies on the defense. And then, Sonny Gray, he's kind of a wild card to me because like we've seen him be very, very good.
Mhm.
And he is obviously on the older side now. But basically his only bad seasons came when he was playing for the Yankees, and I feel like playing for the Red Sox and playing for the Yankees is kind of the same. It's like two sides of the same coin. So,
Hmm?
we'll see about that. But they were able to make these trades and upgrade the team in a way that I didn't expect. Which granted, we didn't get any like super, super high end talent, but we didn't have to trade away our blue chip guys either. So we still
Yep.
have Peyton Tolley, we still have Connolly Early on this team. I expect, if everyone stays healthy through spring training, they'll start in the minor leagues. And then, whenever you need them, call them up. They proved that they could step in and be effective at the major league level. So, I expect more growth from them. Um, You've got guys coming back from injury and Cutter Crawford and Patrick Sandoval. Like, we've seen them be effective major league starting pitchers. So I'm very curious to see how it shakes out. But I think kind of any way you slice it, like there's going to be a chance to win every day based on these starting pitchers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, as you were talking about, just the team makeup as a whole and how disappointing missing out on Bregman and everything was, it still just feels like, you kind of mentioned it, Wilson Contreras is a comparable bat to him, but it feels like the team got like significantly stronger, almost like across the board, in my opinion, everywhere else. Like, yes, you don't have that same third baseman, but like your pitching staff, especially in your starting rotation, is so much stronger now. And you still bring in kind of utility guys like IKF and stuff who are going to provide at least that elite defense behind good pitching. And it feels like there's definitely like a vision here. I mean, it's different and it might not be what Red Sox fans all thought you wanted. And maybe this is a hot take. I don't know if you'd consider it one, but like I think that this is a significantly improved Red Sox team. And just as you said, there's still a trade deadline that's going to happen, and you guys have a lot of talent that's not going to be able to sit on your 26 man, season roster. Like those are going to be pieces that are potentially moved to make those kind of like elite, like just get over the hill kind of moves um, at the trade deadline or even before if they're that aggressive. And so I think this is like a really improved team. Personally, I see it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if I would go significant because I'm still, we'll just have to see. We're relying on a lot of like things to go right. There's not, like we didn't get that high floor bat that I wanted. We didn't get a home run bat. So like I think the margins of victory are not gonna I don't think we're gonna like thump that many people. But I am excited for a full season of Roman Anthony. I think there's some wild cards that we forget about. They've kind of been discarded in Tristan Casas and Christian Campbell, who like
Hmm.
both of them like we've written off, but they could click, and then there's some power, and there's another bat in your lineup, you know. So yeah, I think there's been a lot of pessimism in Red Sox Nation, and you know we talked about the trade deadline. I don't have much faith in Greg Breslow when it comes to trade deadlines at this point. But I do think there is a good team here, and I think if you just looked at the roster and didn't know what led to it being this roster, I think you'd be like, well, this is a great team.
Yeah, and even then, like the replacement for Bregman being a guy who's averaging like a pretty solid OPS plus. I mean, last year was a 123. Like
Mhm.
it's a good bat regardless. And like you're saying, Tristan Casas will be back, and whether he's at first base or DH or whatever, it's like I don't know. I am maybe a little more optimistic on the Red Sox than you guys then, because I really like the makeup of this team right now. I think it's kind of a juggernaut, especially with all the pitching. Like it's just crazy.
Yeah, no question, the Red Sox got better in one place. They, are trying to see if they can piece together some improvement in another place, or at least come to match what they had in the lineup last year. Ultimately, this offseason may have left some fans with a sour taste in their mouths. Alex Bregman came on, kind of caused the Devers drama, and the benefit of that was supposed to be more years of that, and that did not happen. Um, so it may have left some fans wondering what this year's lineup could look like in a world where the acquisition of Alex Bregman last year never happened, right? And so it's really hard to predict this front office's next move, and maybe that trend will continue, and the Red Sox next move will be to first position in the division. Who's to say what their next move will look like? But we'll be around for it. We'll talk much Red Sox this year, so stay tuned for that. Fourth place finisher, let's move on to the Tampa Bay Rays and talk about their offseason. So, look, going into the 2025 season, the Rays remained in a similar position as they have been for much of the last few years. They were predicted to win a decent amount of games, but ultimately fall short of competing for any kind of division title. They delivered on those expectations. They showed flashes of brilliance due to their uncanny ability to find hidden talent, and they also experienced some lows, mostly based around playing in a stadium that isn't their home. That was a big part of it. So the 2025 vibes were off for the Rays for sure because of that. So let's talk about how they addressed those things in the offseason. So let's go through the Tampa Bay Rays offseason. Matt, take us through.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just gonna blaze through these names and then I'll kind of give my piece on them. So we've got Cedric Mullins, the outfielder, Nick Martinez, pitcher, Steven Matz, Jake Fraley, a plethora of prospects from the Orioles that they got in that trade. Gavin Lux, Ben Williamson, Jacob Melton, Steven Wilson. And then as far as guys that left, the Lau brothers are both gone. Shane Baz is gone, Jake Magnum, and Adrian Hauser. Um, what I will say is, many of those guys that left, or at least three or four of them, were like kind of regular players on this team. But the Rays, like we've talked about so many times, they feel like the team that is able to just get the most out of the most random guys who other teams kind of discard. And you look at who they brought in, and it's literally all those profile type of guys. Cedric Mullins was kind of thrown out from his team. Obviously, I think he was at the trade deadline and then just went to free agency. But like Cedric Mullins, I feel like is going to be awesome here. And Nick Martinez is a guy who's kind of never been able to hold down a spot. I think he's going to be awesome here. And so there's a lot of guys like this, Gavin Lux, even like I could see him really making a big resurgence here. There's a lot to like about what they did. And yet at the end of the day, it does seem like they're taking a lot of like bottom barrel stuff and hoping to bring them back to like average or above average players. And so that comes with its own limitations, but leave it to the Rays to try and find more diamonds in the rough because kind of feels like that's what they've been doing my whole life.
Yeah, 100%. And so where I'd like to go with the Rays is, look, Junior Caminero is still on this team, right? Like he's still here. He's going to be here likely for a while longer still. And so, you know, considering these moves and considering who's still on this team from last year, who do they have around Caminero that is going to, help this team stay relevant? If they added somebody you want to highlight, if you want to highlight someone who was on the team last year who's still on the team, feel free. But yeah, who they got around their big star, their big young star that can help this team stay relevant?
In the lineup, it's going to be Yandy Diaz and Jonathan Aranda, who are like I believe switching off between DH and first base with each other. So like they'll both always be in the lineup, but they'll switch off the position. Um, but really, that like other than that, this is like it seems like a transitional Rays team, which we've also seen in the past. They got rid of Brandon Lau. That's, he's been a big part of their lineup for years. Josh Lowe was someone that they had counted on for the last couple of years. Um, Shane Baz was, supposed to be, one of these great starting pitchers for them. And of course, this is what they do. They trade guys all the time. But it really, just like looking at their roster, it seems like a Rays team that's gearing up to be a good team again, but it's just not yet. Like Cedric Mullins, Matt, I respect your opinion that you think he's going to be great here. I I think he might be cooked. He had one really really good year, and that at this point was 2021. So like that's 5 years ago. Um, like I do trust the Rays' ability to tap into guys. So I can't speak to the prospects they got when they traded Shane Baz. I'm sure they'll be great, or at least a couple of them will be great for the Rays. But I just think right now, um, this is just like a weirdly built Rays team. There's not a ton of offense here. Um, that I started talking about Cedric Mullins because he's slotted to hit fifth for them according to Fangraphs. Like
Mm.
it just doesn't seem like a lineup that really has enough thump. And they do have good starting pitching, like especially at the top end. Shane McClanahan, hopefully he can stay healthy for a season. He hasn't been able to do that in quite some time. Drew Rasmussen is a good pitcher. Ryan Pepiot's a good pitcher. I believe Nick Martinez should have a good year this year for them. But then you got Steven Matz back in the starting rotation for the fifth starting spot, and it's like he's he's been a reliever for a little bit now. Like I don't know like if I don't know if I see the vision for right now this year. Um, and I think they signaled that by trading away a few guys that like if the Rays really wanted to compete, they would have kept them around.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I think that's absolutely fair. All I'll say is, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched every Cedric Mullins at bat over the past few years, but just based on the stats alone, I mean, he is a plus player if you look at just OPS, if you're looking at WAR, like for the position, I mean, he is considered an above average player, even in some of these years where he may not have had like the best overall stats. But how many of these were on really bad Baltimore teams? How many times was he not able to be put into these positions because he was leading off for a team that didn't really play very well? And so I just wonder, a guy with his kind of skill set, I leave it to the Rays to be able to maximize someone with his skill set. He's still not super old. He's not young by any means anymore, but he's not like an ancient guy. And I could definitely see him having a very resurgent year, but I'm happy to agree to disagree on Cedric Mullins. He's my MLB The Show like easiest guy to trade for who's good. Like I will gladly base my opinions on the Rays off of MLB The Show.
You know, can it be Cedric Mullins again? Again? Who knows? This season, we'll see what role he plays with the Rays. But round and round the Rays go, right? Trading their way to that Rays patented balance between manageable financial expenditure and quality on field product. So 2026 may feel like a lot of the previous years for Rays fans, and that seems to be the way things go with this franchise. So until the situation with their stadium is resolved, ownership might be willing to keep the team in its current holding pattern, all the while searching through teams' waste bins to find a diamond that can complement some of the young talent already on the roster. So we'll keep our eyes on the Rays, but right now our eyes turn to the Baltimore Orioles, who finished last in this division unexpectedly. So you know, perhaps no team disappointed more in 2025 than the Baltimore Orioles. They were a favorite to explode into the stratosphere behind a bevy of young talent that was primed to break out all at once, and they did the opposite of that. They completely flamed out before the rocket even got a chance to take off. So baseball fans everywhere kind of left scratching their heads at the way the Orioles star players fell off in 2025. And the baseball world remains skeptical about what this team can be, even knowing that they had a whole offseason ahead of them. So, what did they do in this offseason to make things different this year, this time around? Drew, take us through the Orioles moves.
Yeah, so the Orioles, like you said, disappointing year, and the front office acted like it. They got to move quickly. Their big flashy move was signing Pete Alonso to a 5-year contract. So for the first time in his career, he's playing for a new team. Shane Baz, who we just talked about with the Rays, got traded here. Taylor Ward from Dallas's Angels came here. They signed Ryan Helsley very early on in the offseason. They kept Zach Eflin around, and then some flyers, Leody Taveras, and then Chris Bassett. He'll be a nice arm for them at the back of the rotation. Their notable departures: Grayson Rodriguez, who production-wise hadn't given them much, but he seemed like a name they had been relying on. He was the return for Taylor Ward, so he's out of here. Tomoyuki Sagano is gone, but he really wasn't very good last year. And then Gary Sanchez was their backup catcher, but he's out of here too.
All right. So yeah, lots of moves, lots of names that are involved in this discussion here. And so let's start with the biggie. What does Pete Alonso add to this lineup here? So we know that he's going to be surrounded by younger bats, bats who've been around for a few years now, but still on the younger side. So what does he add to this lineup in that spot that he'll be in?
It's less about what he adds. I mean, he's just replacing Gary Sanchez and his production. Like one power bat for another, right?
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Alonso is one of the most reliable power bats in baseball these days. You can pencil him in for minimum 30 home runs, minimum 100 RBIs, and he's kind of old school in that way, where he doesn't grade out well defensively. He does strike out a decent amount, things like that, but he's there to hit home runs and have good vibes, and that's exactly what he'll do. I really loved that move for the Orioles. Ryan Mountcastle had been in a steady decline for a while. He's still on the team as of now, but Alonso definitely an upgrade there, and it adds some much needed thump. And I would put Taylor Ward in that basket too. Let's not sleep on his power. I would expect maybe both of them playing with Baltimore out there in left field. Like maybe the home runs drop a little bit, but in general, they're two guys who can hit the ball very far, and they should have plenty of home runs. Add that to Gunnar Henderson, who is one of the best players in baseball right now. And that's a good, wherever they put them in the lineup, that they should be 3 in a row. That's pretty nice. There are, reasons for concern, reasons why they were, disappointing last year. Adley Rutschman, it's been a couple years in a row now where he really has fallen off and he's not been the player we expect him to be. I think this is kind of his, prove it or lose it year for him. Like if he has another disappointing year, I think it's time for the Orioles to move on, and someone else I'm sure will try to see what they can get from him. Jackson Holliday was, the top prospect in all of baseball a couple years ago. He, I don't know if he came up too young or what, but, he hasn't had the most success yet, and he's going to start the year injured. One of those hamate bone guys. Like Colton Cowser didn't have a fantastic sophomore season. And then their pitching has been their Achilles heel. And I think if you were going to make one complaint about the Orioles offseason is that they didn't really go hard enough into starting pitching. It's kind of like the opposite of the Blue Jays. Like once the Blue Jays signed Dylan Cease, you were like, oh yeah, and if they can get one of those bats, man. But they never did get one of those bats. And then for the Orioles, they got Pete Alonso really early, and you're like, ooh, and if they get one of those starting pitchers, but they never really did. I guess maybe they consider Shane Baz that guy. I don't think he's in the same tier as a Ranger Suarez or a Framber Valdez or whoever. Um,
Yeah.
but they got a great year last year out of Trevor Rogers. Maybe he can repeat that. Chris Bassett, like I said, he'll be a solid back end guy for them. Kyle Bradish was injured for most of last year, so expecting a full season from him should help things. And then if Ryan Helsley can be the Cardinals' Ryan Helsley and not the Mets' Ryan Helsley, then they've got a really good closer as well. So there's still reason to be in on the Orioles. Obviously, last year was a disappointment, but a lot of these guys are still very young, and a lot of them had a lot of promise at one point or another. And they did upgrade the team from the outside as well. So good offseason for the Orioles. Could have been great, and I don't think it was.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, the thing unspoken is, all but one of the guys they brought in fits the aesthetic already. Like they all still look exactly the same.
That white boy team.
So true. We need Taylor Ward and Pete Alonso to go to Turkey so they can grow that hair out.
Get some
They
veneers.
can go fix it. Yeah, and then that way we can get everybody on the same page. But all right, so the Orioles, their front office took that 2025 disaster personally, right? They took aggressive steps to correct course and get back to the AL contender that they once thought they were going to be. So that's the hope, right? The hope is that those aggressive offseason moves will pair with resurgent seasons from those young contributors we talked about, and that the Orioles will make everyone forget about last year by season's end. So, will that be how it shakes out? I don't know, but they definitely tried, really hard to make it so. So, all right, so there is our discussion of each team and their offseason and what we think the impact of some of their moves will be. So now it's time to get down to it. All right, so 2026 final division standings. It's prediction time. So let us start with Drew and give us your prediction for how this division will finish at the end of this year.
All right. Well, I want to preface this with two things. First of all, I'd like to point out this was like a fun fact I saw this week. Um, every other American League East team has played the Dodgers in the World Series since the last time the Orioles have won a playoff game.
That's true.
So just kind of a random fact, and it's not like that long ago, like in relative. It was 2014 the
Right.
last time they won a playoff game, which is kind of a long time, but
That's tough.
but the
2014, that's not that long since going
and
to
I
the
want to
playoffs. It's not that long.
and I want to talk, shout out Red Sox for being the one team that was able to beat the Dodgers in the World Series. But that being said, my real preface for my standings prediction is that I do think these top four teams are going to be close. Like I'm talking within 10 games of each other when it's all said
Wow.
and done. I think it's going to be a tightly contested division. I don't think any team is going to like approach 100 wins, kind of like last year. Like 94 was enough to win the division. I think it'll be something like that. But I also think these teams, are going to be, minimum 85 is kind of how I'm feeling, unless things go off the rails. So with that being said, I do think my first place prediction is the New York Yankees. I think that if I'm a little bit disappointed with all their off seasons, the Yankees had the team that I think was like the most already there, if that makes sense. And so, do I expect them to win the World Series? Absolutely not. But they are a team that has proven to, be able to win divisions here. I think they can do it again. Second place, I have my Red Sox. I think that pitching staff is going to be good enough to keep us in the hunt. Um, and maybe just the lineup's not quite good enough to put us over the top. I have the Blue Jays finishing in third, which would be a drop off for them, but I think they had a magical run last year, and I don't know if we can just expect them to now be the World Series team every year. Like I don't think they did enough this offseason to be like they are absolutely 100% without a doubt the team to beat in the American League. So I think we could see a little bit of a disappointing year from them. I have the Orioles finishing in fourth. I think they did improve, and I wouldn't be shocked at all like if those four are like flipped or something like that and the Orioles end up winning the division. Like I wouldn't be surprised. I picked them in the World Series last year, before they let me down. So they've disappointed me before, but I think the Orioles could finish a close fourth place there. And then I do think the Rays are going to get last place. I think they are um, clearly the worst roster in this division, and I think they kind of understand that, and are maybe thinking more long term than these other teams, while these other four teams are kind of going in and trying to be a contender right now.
All right,
Yeah.
there you have it.
Yeah. Great predictions. Mine are different pretty significantly. Um, so I'll start at the top. I have the Blue Jays with an asterisk. Purely based on I don't know what they or we can expect from Dylan Cease. Um, because ultimately this looks like a team that's relatively the same, if not a little bit worse. I mean, minus Bo Bichette. And their big thing was bringing in Dylan Cease, who is supposed to supposedly be kind of like their new ace, right? Obviously, they still have Kevin Gossman and stuff, and he's still a top of the end like starter. But like he's even started to tinker off in recent years as he's just getting older, and obviously he still had some great stuff at the end. But I put an asterisk there because if Dylan Cease can be an ace, maybe then they can still kind of put it together. But this was a team that I was shocked was as good as they were last year. I projected them to be the worst team in the division, and I have long seen them as not being like a super talented team all around. And you kind of mentioned it at the top of the episode, but like their run was also fueled by quite a bit of like late season magic from really pretty random nobodies who, who's to say if those become anybody? But, I'll buy into the recency bias, and that's why I'll have them placed at first. Is I mean, hey, they were really good last year, and they signed one of the top pitchers in free agency. So, who's to say? But Vladdy can still be that dude, and we'll see. I mean, they still have the potential for a very strong pitching staff. So I've got the Blue Jays at the top with an asterisk, and we'll get back to that asterisk. But second, I have the Red Sox. I think that they are very, very, very good. Um, I think that their pitching staff is going to give them an insanely high floor in terms of the amount of wins they get. It just those top three guys I trust in their current roles to play very well. And then the back end has a lot of really like high potential pitchers fighting for the last two spots. And that's always a good place to be for your pitching staff is you want a lot of guys who have potential fighting for those spots because it just means the best of the best are going to make it. And so I do think the Red Sox are in a really good place. I think Wilson Contreras is a good hitter. I think that there are still a bunch of pieces there. I mean, we get to see a full season of Roman Anthony. That outfield is still stacked beyond belief. So it's I think they're a very good team. The Yankees, I hate. They're in my third place. I think that once again they are kind of just running it back. And granted, they were good last year, but at the same time, I do actually think some of the other teams in this division improved. I'm as we talked about, I'm a little more optimistic on some of these off seasons than you were, Drew. Um, and so for them, I think that third place seems reasonable. I also just continue to wonder. I mean, some of these guys on this roster, like they are an old roster. Like, in my opinion, they are a very old roster. At least they're top heavy and old. Um, and that at some point has to matter, right? Like at some point that has to matter. And so it's hard for me to bet on them. Obviously, Aaron Judge will still probably be Aaron Judge. Dude's a stud. Garrett Cole should come back, but also, I mean, that's a pretty significant injury at his age. And so there's a number of things that make me question it. So I'll take the Yankees third. The Rays I have in fourth because they're the Rays, and I think that they will just win more games than we would imagine they would. And I think that this division has two teams with like very, very, very real chances of being very bad. And those two teams, in my opinion, are the Blue Jays or the Orioles. And so I went with the Orioles as last. Um, I just last year really took the wind out of the sails for me with them because this was supposed to be the big breakout year and it just didn't happen literally for like any of them. It's not even like a couple of the guys hit really big and a couple guys didn't. Like a lot of their big prospects kind of just didn't play all that great or up to what we expected. And so that's tough. Like when you have kind of a new era and they come in finally and just disappoint pretty much across the board. Obviously, pretty decent offseason. Definitely some good players in there. But I put the Orioles with an asterisk as well because I would also say right now they may have the highest potential like lineup of any of these rosters. And so if they are all just like one season late for their breakout, they could easily be the team that flips with the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays could easily be, in my opinion, the last place team. Like it's
Yeah.
that's what I'm struggling with is the two I have at the top and the bottom, I could easily see flipped. And so I put those two with an asterisk because it's hard for me to say with confidence, like, yep, that's my order.
I
That
do
middle
think this
three,
is
I like.
I do think this is the toughest division to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with. Like at least like even
Mhm.
in other tough divisions to predict, there's like a clear one or a clear five. This one, you could convince me of any order.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
Totally. And I think that was borne out in our discussion. I think, we talked about a lot of these teams in similar ways. Our discussion of them ended in similar spots where it's like, okay, decent, and we'll see. And, pretty good. And I think they'll be fine. And so, one of those things where I think that was borne out. So, but there you have it. That is our division preview for the AL East for the 2026 season. We will come back to that when as the season goes on and see, how we did in, predicting how things would shake out. But that will also do it for our episode for our MLB show for this week. Stay tuned for our NFL show for this week. We'll have that coming up for you as well. You can catch that right here on YouTube. You can subscribe here to get that, to get that notification. You can like this video, share it around, hit us in the comments about what you think about the AL East this year. And you can also listen to us on Spotify, if you prefer audio only. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, hit all the good buttons on those places, and everywhere you find us. So it's very helpful for us, and we'd love to hear from you. So yeah, that'll be it for our baseball show this week. So catch us in all those places and catch us for our NFL show later this week. But until then, we will see you next time. Thank you. Goodbye.